What about a little Georgie on a Monday, Cecil?
Happy birthday, George.
Yeah.
I think most people felt like George was a great spirit and a guy who was a sort of a glue guy. You know, the Beatles had tremendous talent and two titanic egos, and George had to make sure that the solos sounded right on the record. I think he was more of a craftsman. I don't think George was ever going to stand out front and shred like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but he made things sound good. He brought in different sounds, all the guitar and the Eastern Indian influence. I think that was George, and so wouldn't be the same without him. The Beatles are greater than the sum of their parts, as great as Paul and John are. But it was a combination of the four that made them what they were. And George was able to do it. He had enough lack of ego, and they all have egos. But George is able to, for instance, on "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," George never felt like he could get the solo quite right, so he brings in Eric Clapton to play the solo.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to do that. It's a Beatles record. He could play it the way he wanted to, but he felt like it would be better with Clapton, and it's a classic. So I think that says a lot about George.
George maybe was kind of like Sam Perkins to James Worthy and Michael Jordan on those Carolina teams. Although Sam Perkins didn't have to take a back seat, like you said, to anybody. But
but you've got some superstars and some big egos, and was probably in some ways a struggle to hold it together as long as they did. But I think George contributed to that by, not that he wasn't a talented, outstanding musician, but he also played his role, and I think that was important too.
Who is your favorite Beatle, Cecil? Of the four?
I don't know. John and Paul are both geniuses, and so I'm a John person. Paul is probably the greatest pop craftsman of our lifetime, but John had probably a little bit more of a dark side to him that makes him intriguing, and stripped away and at its best, listen to Strawberry Fields, probably as great a voice as far as an evocative, emotional voice as there has been in the genre.
Yoko Ono gets thrown under the bus pretty good, Cecil, but was that thing pretty much headed where it was headed regardless?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they to be perfectly honest about the Beatles breakup, he and Paul were different and were headed in different directions. And I don't know at the end of the day, if you look at the Beatles and say, oh, there was so much more they could do. I think they kind of did it all and did it right, and time was done. And so they could have done the Summer Stadium tour forever, but I think they understood that as a creative force, they wanted to express themselves in different ways, and that's fine. And so the 8, 9, 10 years, I guess, if you go back to the Reaper Bond, a little further than that, and the 7 great years of the Beatles, I don't know that another 7 or a 7 after that we're going to stay the same. There's not many bands that do.
John pretty much said it there at the end. I don't believe in Beatles, among other things. So it seemed to have run its course, at least at that point. Let's talk some college basketball. We're talking glue guys in the music business. Looking at this Alabama men's basketball team right now, 3 straight losses, about the worst time of year. You don't want to lose 3 straight anytime. I understand that. But in terms of playing your best basketball at the right time of year, this Alabama team doesn't appear to be doing that. I know it's not a simple answer, but Cecil, when you look at things right now, and and understanding two of these three have come on the road in tough places to win,
Sure.
Kentucky and Auburn. But to come home Saturday and drop a game that you absolutely needed to have, you said it here last week. A primary objective, right, was to take care of home court. And that's got to be a big concern going into tomorrow night. What's missing right now? It's a broad general question, I know, but one or two things that right now, Cecil, this team needs to fix in a hurry.
Yeah, I don't know who the leader on the team is, to be perfectly honest. They don't have any participating seniors. Dante's a junior, but I don't know that that's really his personality. So you've got a lot of guys that hadn't been there before, hadn't been in this situation before. It's funny. They were in probably a more desperate situation, but needed a home win against Arkansas 2 years ago and couldn't get it. But there's really not any guys that were on that team 2 years ago playing a significant role. Dante was there, but didn't play much. Who've been through it. So I think that's part of it. I know leadership is an intangible thing, but I just don't know that there's somebody that's taken on that particular role. I think if you want to talk X's and O's, they just are struggling offensively because I think teams have scouted them and teams defend them, and they realize that probably the two best offensive weapons are two guards who are, I wouldn't say identical players by any means, but have a similar way of getting results, which is Sexton and Ingram putting the ball on the floor and getting it to the rim and making things happen there. Well, people don't respect their three-point shooting enough to open the floor up, and so when they go to the rim, they're going against five guys sometimes, or going challenging bigs and so forth. So it's tough. It's been tough for them to generate offense because teams don't respect them on the perimeter, even at not just at the three, but even at the 15-foot level. Teams just don't come out there and guard them very much. So I think that's one X and O problem. And then it's compounded, when you have guys like that, they can create and do things in the open floor. If you're running, then it's not so crowded around the basket, but you got to rebound the ball to run. And so it's compounded by the fact that they've struggled to rebound the ball on the defensive glass.
Yeah, they've been out-rebounded pretty good in this three-game losing streak and not really creating a ton of opportunities off of steals or loose ball situations for themselves either. And I hear you.
And not handling the ball particularly well when they do.
You're right. Some decisions in the second half, especially against Arkansas, Saturday come to mind in transition that opportunities to score with numbers didn't really play out the way I'm sure Avery Johnson would have liked. And you touched on it. Now that they've been around the league once with some of these teams, including a Florida team coming in here tomorrow night, in the half court, Colin Sexton is not going to get all the way to the rim, is he? You just touched on it. You're seeing defenses commit numbers to inside the paint to prevent him from getting to the rim. He's making a lot of plays, isn't he, that we thought he would make coming into the season in terms of getting into the paint, pitching to the perimeter, but between turning shots down and just not being able to hit shots, that's made it difficult on this Alabama offense. The question of maturity as it pertains to this team, Cecil, inexperience, youth. At this point in the season,
you just have to count
can you buy that?
Braxton have played a lot of games. Dante's played a lot of games. So they've got guys who have played, but they are playing a lot of freshmen, no question about it, or transfers.
They are. Let's look ahead to tomorrow night. This is a Florida team the first time around that Alabama absolutely blitzed in the second half down in Gainesville. The matchup on paper, once again, looks pretty favorable, doesn't it? Especially when you look inside to Dante and the advantage that Alabama should enjoy for the first time in a while in the paint.
I don't think Florida's a team that, like Kentucky or Arkansas, that's really can go really big down there and dominate you on the glass. Auburn, it wasn't so much, they just got so many offensive rebounds in the second half that hurt Alabama. When Alabama just couldn't get a stop in the second half against Auburn, they really didn't play well at all. I thought they played okay at Kentucky. But for about the last 60 minutes of basketball, they hadn't played very well. But Florida's a different type team, a little more perimeter oriented. I mean, they've got some guys that can certainly light you up. Kevon Allen, Keystone has that capability. Chioza's more of a creator, although he can certainly score. So it's a little bit different kind of matchup. And they put the clamps on Florida. They put a big guy guarding Chioza and really pounded the ball inside on the other end and played probably their best half of the year in the second half in Gainesville. Florida will adjust. Florida won't let that happen again. Mike White's too good a coach to just come in and say, well, we're going to do the same thing that got us a 40-17 half at home. They'll change things up, and Alabama's got to be ready for something a little bit different, and they've got some guys who can make some clutch shots. So they've had their inconsistencies this year. Their fans would probably say that they hadn't played well, but they're coming off a big home win, defending the home court against Auburn. So we'll see how it goes tomorrow night.
Cecil, the latest bombshells, I guess you could say, involving college basketball and the FBI investigation dating back to really, I guess, the preseason. How far-reaching, and as much as anything, I guess, your experience for so many years in journalism, these stories, and the ESPN account now with Sean Miller, it looks like some corrections are being made to the time frame of the story as it relates to sports stories.
The story, I think the correction was to something that was said on one of their programs.
Okay.
I don't think they're correcting the story. I think somebody on one of their many talk platforms referred to something occurring in 2017 that occurred in 2016. Obviously couldn't have occurred or wouldn't have been sensible to occur in 2017. Aiden had already signed. I think that was what that correction was. I don't think it was of the story per se.
Let me ask you this.
That's just one. If they've got a wiretap, you're going to have a verbatim conversation, so you're going to know what was said eventually.
And now what we hear, the narrative of, well, everybody cheats in college basketball. And first of all, that's nonsensical from a standpoint. There's over 300 Division I programs.
Sure,
the math doesn't work for everybody to cheat. There's not enough good players for 300 teams to buy.
No, and 200 of those aren't competing for guys that agents are going to be interested in anyway. Nobody. I mean, nobody's scouring Pepperdine's roster, for first rounders or Northern Iowa's or Quinnipiac. So, we're talking about the teams that are competing, the Power Five, which in basketball, it also includes really the Power Six. You include the Big East too. So it's programs at that level is what the concern is. There are a few teams below that compete for those kind of players, but not many, not really many that an agent's going to spend much time worrying about.
As we let you go, Cecil, it is 2/26, kind of a fabricated holiday, I guess, these days for Alabama fans. We're asking the question today. We got to figure out a way to make that work with Peterbrook, by the way. The play, 2nd and 26, obviously Alabama, Georgia. Going into that snap, it all happened so quick. It may have been hard to formulate even a thought or an expectation of that snap, that play coming up after the sack of Tonga Vailoa. What, if any, do you recall and thinking either needs to happen next for Alabama, or maybe you thought would happen next after that sack?
Well, I thought that they were in 3-down territory because if you end up even getting back to say a 4th and 2, I don't know that you really quite frankly, could have put the kicker back out there. You'd had a better chance trying to convert a fourth down. So I was calculating a three down possession, that they'd try and get some back, which I didn't think was impossible because Tua can make plays. He can find a guy, whether it was an underneath route, whether it's a back out of the backfield, whether it's him scrambling around. I mean, that's what cost you the 16 yards on first down. But he was going to do this. You knew he was going to do the same thing and try and make a play. Now, I'm not going to say, I knew it'd come open the way it did. So I was thinking, over the course of three downs, they're going to try and get a first down and keep this thing going because very unlikely, I thought, to tie the game with a field goal.
Yeah, I think that was the most reasonable expectation, to maybe get 10 or 12 on the second down play, like you said, and then hit it again on third.
Didn't think it was impossible for the guy to make a play. He'd made plays.
You're right.
He's got playmaking receivers.
I think the guys around him expected that too.
Yeah, I could have seen a scenario where you hit for 18, 25, and get yourself in manageable third or fourth down.
Would your expectation have been the same with Jalen in the game at that point?
It took the run off the board when Alabama was running the ball pretty well. But other than that, I didn't think the game was over just because of that.
With Jalen in the game there, how much, or does the expectation, in your opinion, change?
I don't know. And you really get into altering the space-time continuum. First of all, you don't know that you've got second and 26.
Right.
So Jalen tends to get rid of the ball more quickly in those situations.
Mm-hmm.
You might have had a second and 10. So had you put him in on a second and 26, you'd have to have tried the same thing I was talking about. You'd try and find Ridley. You'd try and make a big play. And again, you get the pass rushers and it breaks down and he could run for some yardage.
Yeah.
Has done so before. So, those are the kind of hypotheticals. What if this? What if that?
Right. Well, it's easy to discount Jalen now.
Would they have made that exact same play call, that Seattle play call? No, probably not.
Yeah. It's easy to discount Jalen now in retrospect, but what we're talking about is essentially the same play he made against Clemson with 2 minutes to go in that game, right?
Sure.
A couple of years ago with his legs.
Yeah. So or against Mississippi State at the end of that game through that.
Sure.
Same receiver. So to say, oh well, it would have been terrible and he couldn't have done it. Well, maybe not. That's
right.
That's the thing about all these hypotheticals. Everybody knows how they would have turned out. And
of course they do, Cecil.
Exactly the way they thought they'd turn out.
Just like we know how the Beatles would have turned out.
Sure. Yeah, that's the thing. You can't lose with a hypothetical.